My name's Bridget Bowling. Love connecting for kids, always happy to collaborate. Um, I am founder of Little Snoozers. It's been open for 10 years, got certified in pediatric sleep consulting 10 years ago. I have 4 little snoozers of my own, and there's no way I would have that many if they weren't sleeping well.
That's why I have one.
Right. But I will say there's a babysitter at my house tonight because my husband's out of town, and I'm so happy to be out of bedtime routine. Go home and they're asleep. All right. So we're going to help achieve healthy sleep at any age. You're never too late to learn and teach healthy sleep. We'll start at the beginning though. So ABCs of safe sleep. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but alone, no bedding, stuffed animals, pillows, blankets in their crib, just a tight sheet. Instead of a blanket, they wear a sleep sack. And the ABCs are all the way up till a year. They should always be placed on their backs when they start rolling. They can decide side or belly, whatever they prefer. If they are little and you put them on their back and they roll over onto their belly, you want to, first of all, make sure that their arms are free so that they can lift their head up. And then if they roll over kind of by accident and get really upset, go in, flip them back over, walk right back out. We don't want them to be stranded on their belly until they can choose when they want. But if you need to help them learn to roll over from belly to back, you can do it during awake time. Hand on the belly, hand on the back. Practice the motion so that they can get the hang of it. Crib, bassinet, pack and play. If you're not sure if it's a safe sleep space, you can check it on the cpscgovernment.gov website, Consumer Product Safety Commission, to confirm that it's a safe space for sleep. So those are the ABCs of sleep under a year. When they're over a year, I kind of think of it as their crib is now their room. This is regardless of whether they're in the crib or not, but they're more mobile. You want to make sure their room is safe, that dressers are anchored, bookshelves are anchored to the wall so nothing can fall over on them. Blinds, make sure there's no cords hanging down like so. And then also, like I said, once they move out of their crib, it's like fair game. So picture that as their crib. Make sure everything's safe, especially the boys are kind of rambunctious sometimes. Think they can scale the walls. So make sure that room is safe, okay? Okay, we will go into more detail on each one of these, but the components of healthy sleep, proper sleep environment, it's kind of what you were talking about, how do we wind down? Consistent soothing routine, coordinating sleep drive with natural biological rhythms, eliminating sleep associations and understanding how to self-soothe, as well as consistency with responses to sleep disruptions. All right, sleep environment. I like to call it their dark sleep cave. So the darker, the better. We'll start with temperature. Temperature between 68 and 72 degrees. They should be wearing 1 layer more than you have on when you're sleeping. The sleep sack would cover as like the blanket. Most people probably sleep with a blanket on, even in the summer, like just feels weird sleeping without anything. So that's the sleep sack. And they make them for like all ages. So even like they're like 36 months and younger, they're amazing. Because even though it's safe to have like a blanket and pillow in there, they're moving and grooving overnight, that the blanket's usually in one corner and they're in another. So sleep sacks are awesome. Like I said, cave-like, the darker the better. Dark shades for that will help with naps, making the room dark. This is one of my travel hacks. Black garbage bags and painter's tape. As soon as we got to wherever we were, vacation house, I would tape up the black garbage bags. And I didn't care if it looked like a meth lab. Like my kids were sleeping and it was a great vacation. So don't be afraid of making it dark. And then white noise. So this will just kind of drown out the outside noises, whether they're inside the house or actually outside, especially with it getting nice out one day. But it will cut out, it's going to be getting lighter out it'll cut out the noises of lawnmowers and all that fun stuff. Some people are concerned because there's other kids in the house and they might wake up the kids. I actually have a sound machine in all of my kids' rooms, and we have one in the hallway. So it kind of just takes the edge off. The hallway one runs 24/7, and it's very low. It would be the sound of a fan, just like right over there. So it does not need to be loud. All right, so sleep routines. This is kind of where you were talking about, when do we wind down? So for actual bedtime, between 20 and 30 minutes should be your bedtime routine. And that's going in the child's room till you walk out, okay? If it's a bath night, you would do the bath before the bedtime routine. It wouldn't count, okay? If you're nursing and your significant other is going to put the child to bed, you can do the nursing and then hand off and they're on duty. So that doesn't necessarily have to be part of the bedtime routine. You're not tied into the routine if you're nursing. So 20 to 30 minutes, you'll want to do the same steps every night. If you don't have a good bedtime routine now, start it tonight, start it tomorrow. Very simple, but the more consistent you are with it, the quicker they'll catch on. Oh yeah, now I remember. Oh, this is what we're going to do next. Oh yeah, then I go to sleep. So an example for a baby, PJs, you do the feeding, read a book or two, just a little board book. You don't want to lose their interest. And then sing a song as you're walking over, putting them down, walking out. Okay, so it doesn't have to be long. When you start the bedtime routine, if you haven't already, you'll want to read the same exact book. This is if they're younger. You'll want to read the same book and sing the same song, because the repetition of that will cue their brain, oh yeah, I remember what's coming next. Oh yeah, then there's this song. So being consistent with it, at least for a little bit, will help them understand what is coming. Toddlers and up, they would go to the toilet, brush their teeth, PJs, read, cuddle, song, kiss, good night. So the coordinating sleep drive with natural biological rhythms is basically syncing their sleep up to their circadian rhythm. So we all have them. It's when your body's wanting to sleep, when you're feeling tired, we're just syncing sleep up with it. Same steps will cue your baby's body of what's coming next. Here's an example of a schedule. This is for a younger child under the age of 8 months, but not like, let's say after 4 months. So for their circadian rhythm isn't developed fully until 4 months. So after that, a schedule can look something like this. We're trying to aim for about 12 hours overnight, but the normal wake time is between 6 and 7 in the morning. This bridge nap is, it's not restorative. It's just one sleep cycle, and it helps them get from the afternoon nap to bedtime without getting overly tired. That's an awesome nap, like if you're out walking or you're around the house and you have them in the carrier. So, but that just helps them get to bedtime without getting overly tired. The bedtime is, you see a range there, and the reason is because you can base bedtime on day sleep. So as much as you're consistent with everything else, like let's say they had a crappy nap day or there was a doctor's appointment and they missed a nap, you can always adjust bedtime. That's one of the things you're going to get annoyed with me saying, but it's one of my biggest hacks or secrets, is that you can always adjust bedtime to keep things on track. I will dive into that a little more. Here are sleep needs by age. I'll let you guys look at the chart yourself. But it has the number of their ages, number of naps, hours of day sleep, hours of night sleep, and then total hours of sleep over there on the right. It's also sometimes hard to understand that babies and children need a lot more sleep than we do. So just kind of a gentle reminder. Okay, so sleep associations. That's when, let's say they can't sleep unless this happens. If you don't do this, they can't, do anything independently. So if you're trying to sleep train or teach your child to sleep, sleep associations become a problem when they're relying on you or that to sleep. If they wake up in the middle of the night after a short nap and need the same exact help to fall asleep, another sleep association, you can work on teaching independent skills. There's different ways to do that. That's where the sleep training methods come in. In my mind, all the methods are wonderful. You just have to be consistent with it. And the sleep training methods are the least important things that there are. And the reason is because you're putting everything else into play, where you're creating this awesome atmosphere. You're putting them down when their body wants to sleep. You're doing this awesome routine. So the actual sleep training method, which people like get scared about, or it's like the least important thing. There's so many other important factors that you might not even need to sleep train, or it'll come much easier. If feeding to sleep is a sleep association, which happens a lot and is not abnormal, what you can do is, instead of feeding to sleep, you can feed at the beginning of the routine. So, you would do the feeding session, and then you would put the jammies on and change the diaper and do the book and the song. So you would just shift things where you're not feeding them to sleep so that they can learn to put themselves to sleep. Consistency of response is key. The more consistent you are, the quicker they'll catch on. A couple positive versus negative. Oh, I forgot the E. Sleep association.
Oh, it's right there. It just blends in.
Oh, good. Oh, I see it. Perfect. So one of them is rocking them to sleep. Instead of that, you can offer them a lovey. The AAP does not recommend putting anything in their crib prior to a year. So after that, they could use a lovey to find some comfort in instead of being rocked. If you're sitting or laying with them while they fall asleep, instead you could put them down and use your voice to soothe them, because it's much easier to move your voice out of the room than your body. If you're holding them till they fall asleep, again, you can sing to them where they're still finding comfort in you. It's just not the physical comfort that they were getting before. And like I said, it'll be a lot easier to be singing to them and move out of the room than if you're laying with them. If they're used to motion sleep, so driving or stroller, they can find their thumb or finger or pacifier. One sleep association would be if they kept waking in the middle of the night and you had to repacify them every time. That would be a sleep association. So what you could do with that, if they do like the pacifier, which is great, you can help them learn to master it during awake time so that it translates over to when they're in their crib. And you can put a couple extra ones in there. They even have the glow in the dark ones these days. Nursing to sleep. You can, again, nurse them at the beginning of the crib or the routine, and then let them move around in the crib to kind of get those wiggles out. All right, nap transitions. So let's say you're starting before 4 months, they're probably on 4 or 5 naps, little mini naps throughout the day. But once they get sleep more organized, and let's say they're on the 3 naps, the bridge nap, which is the one that I talked about, that's not restorative. It just gets them from second nap to bedtime without getting overly tired. That one's super easy to drop because they pretty much do it on their own. It was a very low pressure nap in the first place. So after them not taking it for about 2 weeks, it's safe to assume they're finished with it. Again, you're going to get annoyed with me saying this, but offer an earlier bedtime during that transition because they're losing sleep. So you just tack it on a tiny bit. So 15 to 30 minutes on bedtime, and it'll keep them well rested during that transition. When you drop from 2 naps to 1, it typically is around 15 to 24 months. I know some daycares do it at 12 months, and it seems to work fine because kids start to read the room and see like, all right, well, they're doing it, and the FOMO kind of fades because everyone else is sleeping. But typically it's around 15 to 24 months. If you put your child down for the morning nap and then they are sleep great, and then you put them down for the afternoon nap and they're fighting you on it, it's not necessarily a sign that they're ready for one nap. It's more so what you could do is cap the morning nap at an hour. So you put them down at the morning nap, you wake them up after an hour, and that'll preserve the afternoon nap for a while. I think my oldest stopped taking that nap at 24 on like his second birthday. When you do drop it to one nap, you'll want to start it around noon. So you'll drop it earlier to make up for, the transition of 2 to 1. The nap, when they're down to one nap, it should be around an hour and a half to 3 hours. And then from one nap to 0 usually happens close to school age. Sometimes it's earlier. You'll want to drop bedtime earlier during that time. If you can try to just get like quiet time in their room, so they might not be napping, but they're in their room for an hour of quiet time, that's great. Not every kid will do that, but like I said, just adjust bedtime earlier during these transitions to keep them sleeping well. All right, night wakings and early risings. So there's a ton of different reasons for these. If your child was sleeping great and now they're not, we'll jump to, actually not on here, but you'll adjust bedtime. But let's look at the other one. So hunger. So if they have an overnight feed and they wake up in the middle of the night, typically I would encourage night feeds. Let's say they're down to one night feed, to do it after midnight and before 4:30 in the morning. Okay, the reason you don't want to do it before midnight is because the first chunk of sleep is the most restorative sleep they'll get all night. So you don't want to interrupt it with a feed. After midnight is great. You don't want to do it after 4:30 because it's so close to wake time that, then they wake up in the morning and you go to feed them and they're like, thanks, but I just ate. And it kind of just throws you off for the rest of the day. If the room isn't dark enough, sound machine isn't blocking outside noises, that can be an interruption. If they're undertired, if they had too much day sleep and then you try to go put them to bed and they're just not into it, that could be a sign that they're undertired. Overtired, if they're not getting enough overall sleep, either at night or during naps, it could cause them to be overtired, which makes it difficult for them to sleep overnight. And then if there's a sleep association, that can lead to wake ups. So they're waking up throughout the night and need your help. That is habitual wakings or settling skills. Basically, they don't know how to self-soothe. Once they do know how to self-soothe, once you teach them, they'll have that skill forever. It's not to say that they won't get off track, but it's once they know the skill, they will have it. All right, sleep regressions. If your child becomes overly tired or too long of a wake time, so with that, you can make sure that they are getting enough sleep during the day and overnight. When they're due to make a nap transition, you want to make up for sleep with the early bedtime. Okay, so I know that's annoying that I keep saying it, but the early bedtime is my biggest trick for night wakings and early risings. If they're learning a new skill, so they start talking or they are crawling, rolling, standing, sitting, a lot of times you put them down for bed and that's when they will practice their new skills. I have a lot of clients who will be like, oh my gosh, they just fell asleep sitting up. Well, because they don't know how to get down. But so that's the time that they are always practicing. So you might want to adjust bedtime a little bit to allow for, them to get that practice time in and fall asleep with enough time. Getting sick or traveling, those are things that'll throw off sleep for a minute. Just be consistent with how you respond and get back on track when you get home. Or a lot of times when they're feeling better, they're like, oh, good. If they were sleeping great before, they're like, oh, good, back to sleep. Or traveling, we're all happier to be in our own beds when we get back. Had a great time or not, usually they're happy to be back in their bed too. Teething is always an interruption, sometimes what you can do with that is work on teething during awake time. So, the frozen washcloths or the chew things, it kind of alleviates that pressure during the daytime so that it just doesn't flow over into night. But they teeth for so long that it's it's a real treat. Most common sleep regressions are at 4 months, which is the dreaded one. But I like to see that because that tells me they're developmentally ready for sleep training. 8 months is usually one, and then 2 years. All right. Autism, ADHD, anxiety, and sleep. You want to respect the importance of bedtime. Bedtime routine is key. Being consistent with it. I don't know if any of you have school age kids, but all these snow and cold days are really throwing things off because there's no routine, right? So just translate that over to a bedtime routine. It does wonders. Set an appropriate bedtime and be consistent with it. This is the bedtime. This is what time we're going to bed, no matter what. I always say 80-20. So if you stick to their normal bedtime 80% of the time, the 20 you veer away, whether you're out late at this wonderful event or you're at a party, they'll bounce right back. But 80-20, sleep environment is so important. So giving them their dark little sleep cave will promote sleep. Avoid screens, excitement, and caffeine, chocolate, ice cream, all that fun stuff before bed. I would recommend at least 30 minutes before, an hour if possible. And then get lots of physical activity and sensory activities out during the day, which is so hard because it's been so cold. My kids turned to my basement into like a soccer field, I think. I'm like, I can't even look down there. What is but yeah, get as much energy out as you can during the day. Keep to a daily schedule, sleeping and eating. You're doing all of these things at the same time. And then regulate naps in older kids to preserve bedtimes. Sometimes if they're not sleeping great overnight, they make up for it during the day and it's throwing off bedtime and overnight sleep. So if you have to stop the naps and keep them awake during that time, it'll help promote sleep overnight. All right,
so
Mackenzie.
This is where I'm going to step in. I'm Mackenzie. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, so I'm coming in with experience with autism. I have experience with kids 2 to 22 and everything in between. So that's what I'm going to be touching on. But the strategies I'm going to be talking about are not just exclusive to someone with autism. They can work with any child as well. So as she was talking about the importance of scheduling and routines, if you have a kid with autism, you may know that this is extremely important. So one helpful tool is a visual schedule. So I have a couple examples here, and these are pretty easy. You can honestly make them on your own. I just Googled them, and then you can copy and paste into a Word document and print them off. You can come to the library and print them. So this can help alleviate some of the anxiety of that routine, right? So you're going to establish that routine, but they are an active participant and they need to know what's coming next. So having this in a spot that is visible to them, probably in their bedroom, something that's going to be eye level. So if you have a younger kid, you want them to be able to see it. And then you want them to be an active participant in this. So you're going to complete the task that you're doing. So we're going to eat dinner, and then we're going to walk over to our schedule together, and we're going to check it off or Velcro it up or whatever whatever the schedule is. The goal is they could eventually do this by themselves and can follow this routine independently. But at first, you're going to have to guide them and help them check things off. Another thing, too, that can be helpful with the transition from task to task is a timer. You can use one on your phone, or you can buy a specific one. They also make really cool ones that are you can get them on Amazon. They have like colors or animals. So if your kid doesn't understand time or anything like that, which a lot of our kids don't, it's just a nice visual for them to know when things are happening and how long these things are going to take. All right, so one thing that can be helpful too is setting up some type of reward system. This could be for sleeping in our own bed, for sleeping through the night, whatever it may be that you're specifically struggling with. Again, I'm sure maybe you guys have some resources, but I just Googled these and got them online. So you could probably steal this. You copy it and put it in a Word document and print it off. But setting up a reward system can help reinforce or reward those behaviors for we stayed in our bed or we slept throughout the night. I actually did this for one of my clients. He was 10 and was still sleeping with his parents, which is obviously not something that we want to do forever. So we did a little reward system, and every night that he slept in his bed by himself, he got a little check mark, and at the end, he wanted a monster truck toy. He got it, and we did it that one time. He's been sleeping in his bed ever since. So it can kind of just get that motivation going from the start. Obviously, we don't want to rely on having to do that every single night for the rest of eternity, but it can get you at least going and a good start for that. Some of them are more like this one's just I stayed in my bed all night, or we can add more specific components to it. So I fell asleep without crying, or I stayed in my bed, whatever it may be. You can make different goals as well, specific to the kid. So you can always start with just like, maybe it's just a week that we want to do this, and then we can extend it to a couple weeks or a month. It's going to be really specific to you and your situation and kind of, what your kid needs, and adjust it from there. But it could be a nice little motivator if all the things that we're doing are not working. All right, so one thing that I do in my profession is we identify the function of behavior. So kind of like the why. Why are we doing this? What is this kind of like getting us? So then we can come up with a functionally equivalent alternative. So one thing that I always tell parents to do, again, whether you have a kid with autism or you don't, whether you're consulting with a behavior specialist or your doctor, is data collection. Record everything. Like record, because your doctor, even if you're consulting with them, is probably going to want to know what time are they going to bed? What time are they waking up? When they're waking up, how long are they awake for? What behaviors are you seeing? So writing all of that down and just having that available for whatever professional you're consulting with is going to help you, because you're coming in prepared. They can't hit you with questions that you're like, I don't know. You're like, no, here I have it, ready to go for you. So definitely, like, what you can do, like a journal. So you can just get like a composition book, a notebook, and just write it down every single night, for yourself. Once we kind of are collecting data and seeing these things, we can start to narrow down what we call a function. So there's a couple that are related to sleep. So one, escape avoidance. So we're engaging in problem behavior. Maybe it's not even problem behavior. Maybe it's just like we're being silly and we're doing all of these things to avoid going to sleep. I can do all of these things and I can act out for 25 minutes. That means 25 minutes less of me sleeping. Well, okay. The next one might be related to attention. So maybe we want you to come to me in my bed. I am, I'm screaming, I'm crying, I'm doing all these things, I'm throwing things, whatever it may be. That's going to get you to come to them, because obviously we want to keep them safe and we don't want these things to be happening. So they might be looking for that attention component. And then another big one is access. So we want to have our toys. We want to have our tablet. We want to do all of these things. These are so much more fun than going to sleep. So all of these things, we will identify one, and then it's going to be, the interventions are going to be very specific to your child. So I have in here, like, if you guys have these situations arising, we can talk during the Q&A specifically about your situation, because they can't give you a one-size-fits-all necessarily for this kind of stuff. But just things to be thinking of. Get into data collection, write everything down, can help you identify patterns and help the professionals that you're working with identify those too, to better help you. All right, so we kind of already talked about this. I combined both. And then also my disclaimer as well is that, like, you want to make sure that you're ruling out all things related to medical, or if your child's on medications or anything like that, you want to rule all of those things out before we're tackling anything that's related to behavior, because you can change all of the things that you're doing behavior-wise, how you're reacting, but if it's something related to a medication side effect or something medically wrong, if they're sick or things going on like that, like, nothing you do is going to solve that. So we want to solve those problems first before we're kind of, going in behaviorally. I think I covered everything on here already.
Okay, so caregiver roles, you want to be a calm brick wall of empathy in order to help them feel safe enough to fall asleep. This is super important, because some people have heard or thought that you don't want to be in their room other than sleep. But we want them to know that it's a safe space. We enjoy being in their room. We read in their room. We sing in their room. We do puzzles in their room, and we also sleep in there. So we don't want to create any negative associations with their room and sleep. We love the room. We love sleep. When you say you're going to do something, follow through on it. That way they know that they can trust what you're saying. That's positive and a negative. So if there's consequences to their behavior, stick with what you said you were going to do. Also, you're celebrating something, stick with the celebration of them sleeping in their room. Work on self-regulation in order to co-regulate. So make sure you're calm, cool, and collected, so that it will also portray onto them. Children are capable of managing life's ups and downs. We just need to teach them coping skills as well as model appropriate behavior ourselves, which I understand. Sleep, everyone's tired, it's frustrating, but the more calm we can be, the calmer and quicker bedtime or whatever might be, you can get through it. Single most helpful strategy for parents of kids with ADHD is validating your child's thoughts and feelings by showing interest and empathizing with them. Create a positive sleep association and celebrate successes. When my kids would get off track, one of the things we'd do when they would, because the one little one, he kept coming in our bed in the middle of the night, we'd take him back. Sometimes we'd forget to get him back on track. We did a chart like Mackenzie had, and to celebrate, in the morning, we'd jump on my bed. So he'd come in, we'd hold hands jumping on the bed. It was like the most fun thing for him. So just celebrate small successes. They'll lead to bigger ones. Learning to sleep is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're not going to go home tonight. Your kid's going to be an amazing sleeper. It takes a little bit of work, but you can definitely get there. Commit to the process.